We have a very special guest on today's Peacock and Williamson. As you can see, if you are on the YouTube channel, we got Patricia Traina. She's the host of Locked On Giants, breaking down everything going on in New York with the new look Giants. All that coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson right now.
You're listening to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show, your daily podcast on the National Football League, powered by the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock and Matt Williamson with you as usual at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. But a special guest joining us today talking New York Giants. That is Patricia Traina. Patricia, how are you today? And excited to talk New York Giants. I feel like this is the most excited I've been about the New York Giants for a little while. Is the fan base feeling the same way?
Yeah, excuse me, join the club. I mean, it's a new era of Giant football. A lot of people are optimistic. And unlike, past situations where we've had a new head coach, people coming in from the outside with the new GM, working hand in hand here, a lot of talent, a lot of competition, and a lot to look forward to as the Giants look to get into the new century finally, after running with these antiquated systems that just don't seem to work anymore. So
I'm with you, Patricia, and that fan base. I mean, these last 5 years have been as bad as any team in the league, to be very honest. And there looked like there was doubt if this team could turn it around. But I think the Brian Daboll hire is my favorite of all the head coaches. They got some salary cap stuff to get out from under, but I really think that this could be going the right direction for the first time.
Yeah, I'm with you. Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
Look, they tapped into, look at who they tapped into. They brought in Daboll and general manager Joe Shane from Buffalo, an organization that turned it around. So they know what the formula is. They also brought in a guy who doesn't get a lot of credit, but he's a very big part of the organization. That's the assistant general manager, Brandon Brown, who came from Philadelphia, which is pretty much had some success over the years as well. So they finally went outside of, the family, so to speak, and they brought in new ideas, fresh ideas. And what I liked about this hiring cycle is that none of the people from the organization that, like the Kevin Abrams or the Chris Pettits or whoever that had been with the organization for a number of years, none of them got interviews because, look, it just wasn't working what they were doing. The Giants way was broken. They threw it out. They brought in these new guys, and now they have a new way that they are defining. And we'll see if it yields fruit. But right now, there's a lot of optimism that they're on the right track, and better days are ahead if you were a Giants fan.
I know there hasn't been any football yet, aside from some, OTA practices and stuff, but is there anything you can sort of glean from what you've seen from the new coaching staff, whether it be scheme or just the way they run things or just, the style of team that this New York Giants is going to be under a new staff?
Yeah, I mean, from an offensive standpoint, I think you're going to see, I call it Buffalo Light. It's going to have it's going to have a Buffalo flavor to it. It's going to be primarily a passing offense. For example, you're going to see probably Saquon Barkley getting out into space a lot more than you have seen him in the past, which is, I don't know why they went away from that, because as a rookie, that was something he did well. So that's something for sure that I think we're going to see more of, a lot more passing, with the running game being sprinkled in, as opposed to power football like the Giants have always been known for. So that's a mold they're breaking. You're going to see more aggression on defense. Wink Martindale is the defensive coordinator. He's coming in and he doesn't care who he's going up against or whatnot. He's coming after you, and he's going to bring everything including the kitchen sinks. So that's something. We always hear about defenses and they want to be aggressive, but there's different ways to be aggressive. And Wink Martindale is probably, based on what we're hearing, based on what we've seen, this is going to be a real aggressive defense with some different looks that we have not seen from Giant defenses in the past few years. Some very creative looks, I might say. Going back to the offensive side of the thing, the big thing is Daniel Jones. Is he going to finally take the next step? And I like what Brian Daboll was doing with Daniel Jones. Brian Daboll and offensive coordinator Mike Kafka, they're kind of simplifying Daniel Jones's job a little bit so that he has to do a little less thinking, and they're giving him every possible advantage because one of his greatest weaknesses, I think we can all agree, is his reading, his pre-snap reads, his post-snap reads. There were a lot of problems with that. They're doing things to simplify things for Daniel Jones. And so far, it's been paying off. So we'll see if it continues to pay off.
Let's stick with Daniel Jones, because I think probably a lot of our listeners from a kind of a national perspective thought, oh, picking up his fifth-year option is an easy decision. We're not going to invest in him. We don't want to be on the hook for guaranteed money. I bet there was a lot more thought and back and forth that went into that, because he certainly has ability. I'm not saying he's Josh Allen, but he's, has some traits as a big, strong runner as well as a pocket passer that Allen possesses. And I'm sure Daboll was excited to work with him. And I also think if you really study Daniel Jones's career, with all the different systems he's been forced to deal with and all the change, I don't know what we really should have expected from him in the first place. So do you think that 50-year option was, something they went back and forth on?
No, I think it made all the sense in the world from a financial perspective, as well as, like you said, you don't know what you have in him. And even, John Mara, the co-owner, had the quote of the year so far. He said, "We have done everything possible to screw this kid up." From the lack of stability, from the lack of stability with offensive line, the lack of, receiving targets, the lack of consistency in the coaching and the schemes, they have messed with this kid. And it is a miracle, and we have seen examples over the years of quarterbacks that came in and there was high expectations of them. And because something wasn't right, they got battered around and whatnot, they haven't panned out. I mean, and you can list those examples if you want. But with Daniel Jones, what they're trying to do is they're trying to salvage this kid. So they brought in somebody who is willing to work with him and say, okay, Daniel, what do you like to do? What don't you like to do? And like I said, they're simplifying things for him so that he doesn't have to do a lot of thinking, because right now, if there's one thing that's been consistent, it's been his post-snap reads and how he hasn't been able to, process what he's seeing quickly enough. The other thing that's big is Daboll has said to Daniel Jones, don't be afraid to make mistakes in practice. That's what practice is for. Last year, I think you can make the argument that they drummed it into the previous coaching staff, drummed it into Daniel Jones's head. Don't turn the ball over. Don't make a mistake. And when you do that to somebody, guess what? They're going to play tight. They're going to play scared, and you're not going to get the best version of them. So just back to the point about the money thing, it made sense from a cap perspective, because look, they didn't want to invest in not knowing if Daniel is indeed going to be the guy moving forward. And also, if you think about it, next year, let's assume he does bowl out this year. Well, if you had picked up that option and you wanted to extend him now, the first year cap hit of a new deal would have had to be equal to what he would have been getting guaranteed money in the option year. So from a financial perspective, it also made sense.
So you don't think it's a slam dunk, one and done, he's elsewhere a year from now?
I don't think so. Not right now. Yeah. That's subject to change, though, because obviously they haven't played any games. But so far, what I have seen from Daniel Jones and the practices I've seen, and we've only seen, as we record this, the OTA practices, the mandatory minicamp is coming up this week, as we record this. But I think Daniel Jones is playing faster. He's playing with a little bit more confidence. There have been mistakes. You can say that there have been mistakes, but again, it's not like, oh my gosh, I made a mistake. That's it. I'm done. I'm done.
Right. Yeah, I'm getting
so
cut.
he's not as tense, and it's that quarterback mentality. You make a mistake, you go on to the next play. That's what they're trying to get into his head. And so far, from what I can see and what I've heard, so far so good.
All right, Buffalo Light. I'm kind of workshopping this in my head since you said that, like maybe boneless buffalo wings. That was what we're looking at here.
Well, I like boneless buffalo wings.
Okay,
so I'm
me
good
too.
With that.
They're easier to eat on the air, Brian.
That's true. Yeah.
Mild. Let's go with mild as opposed to hot. Yeah.
Okay. Some people call those chicken nuggets, man. I'm not going to give you any grief for that. More with Patricia Traina coming up, talking New York Giants, get a little deeper into that roster and what this team might look like in the NFC East. But I got to let the folks out there know about Blue Nile. At BlueNile.com, you can celebrate all of life's special moments, from creating the custom engagement ring of her dreams to gifting a classic and timeless jewelry piece, all at prices you won't find at a traditional jeweler. Whether you're ready to pop the question or celebrating those milestone moments in life, find jewelry as unique as her with the modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com. And it's that online shopping that is really key, because I don't know what I'm doing personally when I'm looking for something like this. You want to buy a big gift for someone, and it's important, right? And you want to show them you care and give them a token of whatever it is, the love you're trying to portray. And I never know what I want to buy, but they have experts on hand 24/7 for you via chat, online, or on the phone to help you find the right piece for the right person, all within your budget. Find that memorable gift at every budget at BlueNile.com and make your moment sparkle with jewelry from Blue Nile and the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show, because listeners are getting $50 off purchases of $500 or more. This is a podcast exclusive that includes engagement as well. So use Locked On. That is code Locked On to get that offer. Plus, every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. So shop stress-free and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com today. I believe I spoke about this already and told Matt about my story of a piece of my vehicle that came flying off as I was making my last trip, my last load, as I was traveling back to the Bay Area and moving my family. And the first thing I thought was, gosh dang it, I'm going to have to take my car in. There's an extra $500 expenses, at least for my move now with what just happened to my car. And then I remembered, oh, wait a second, rockauto.com. I tell people about this website all the time. So I went to rockauto.com, and guess what? They had the exact part I needed for my exact car. $40. $40. It was something I watched a YouTube video for 5 minutes on how to fix it. I popped the thing back on. It came with the screws and the rivets. I just popped it in there. Brand new fender cover. Car looks perfect. $40 versus whatever kind of $100 I'd be charged at the dealership or just for the same part at a chain store. 30%, 50%, even 100% upcharge at a lot of those places, plus all of the labor. And just because I know about rockauto.com, just because they're a sponsor, I felt like I was able to pull this off. So you can do the same at rockauto.com. It's a family business, been serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years and always reliably low prices. So go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck. And when I say all the parts, they've got a crazy selection at Rock Auto. Make sure you write Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box? So they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. Thanks again, everybody, for making Peacock and Williamson your first listen every day. We have a listener survey up right now to learn more about our listeners like you, and you can help us make your favorite Locked On podcast even better. So go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey right now to get started. Won't take very long, and you can qualify for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards. So take our audience survey. Go to lockedonpodcasts.com/survey. Thank you very much for your help on that. All right, Patricia, talking New York Giants here. We've talked a lot about what the scheme change might look like, what the coaching staff is bringing to the table, what Daniel Jones might be competing for here on the last year of his rookie deal without the fifth-year option being picked up. But what about the players that he's going to be throwing the ball to? And I know that Saquon Barkley's had his injury concerns, but when he's healthy, he's dynamic. They brought in a ton of talent over the last couple of years at wide receiver. Last year, first-round pick in Kadarius Toney, then Wan'Dale Robinson this year in the second round. There seems to be some crossover in how those two guys could be used. Who's going to be the guy? Like Matt and I like to talk fantasy football a lot. If Patricia, if you were making your first selection of New York Giants in that offense, who's it going to be? Who's going to get peppered with targets from Daniel Jones?
I have to interject super quick, guys, because just like 3 days ago, I threw it out on Twitter, didn't even know Patricia was going to be joining us, that the Giants are my favorite sneaky fantasy team to invest in. I mean, I think this offense is going to do good things, especially from a fantasy perspective.
Yeah, I think it is too. But as far as picking the one guy,
that's tough.
That's going to be tough. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I mean, that is going to be tough because what Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka want to do is they want to tailor the offense to the opponent that they are facing. So it's not going to be, where a few years ago when they had Odell Beckham Jr. on the team, you knew Odell was going to be the guy regardless, come rain or snow or sleet or whatever. They're going to mix things up. Now, what is kind of cool about what they have done is we have seen some creative looks from that offense. For example, there was one look where Saquon Barkley lined up wide. You had a tight end in the slot, Daniel Bellinger, and you had a wide receiver in the backfield. We're talking creative stuff here, guys. And the defense and between you throw in the pre-snap motion, which again is something we didn't see a lot of when Jason Garrett was here. You don't know what's coming. And it's like if you sit there, there was a time when I could sit in the press box and I could call out what the play was going to be, and I could call out who's going to get the ball and what route and all that, because it was just so obvious. Now, not so much so. So I think, if you're looking to draft for fantasy purposes from the Giants, a guy I would definitely consider picking up, Saquon Barkley, if he's healthy.
Sure.
Because again, you're going to have the rushing and the receiving aspect. So the value of him, I think, just went up, twofold. From a receiving perspective, Wan'Dale Robinson is a guy to keep an eye on. This is a kid who, like Kadarius Toney, is for lack of a better term, a human joystick. So you don't be surprised if you see him taking some snaps out of the backfield as well as Kadarius Toney, which is why I think the Giants maybe de-emphasized drafting a running back this past year. They're going to see if they can add somebody via undrafted free agency. They got this kid, Jashwan Corbin, who's going to, try and make the team. But the receivers, position versatility was a big thing for the Giants. They've got tight ends, like I said, lining up in the slot, lining up in the backfield. They've got running backs lining up out wide. I mean, it's so many different things that we have not seen in I can't tell you how long. It's been a while, and I'm excited to see what they keep and what they don't keep, because listen, I've gotten fooled in the past at OTAs. I used to say, oh wow, the Giants are splitting Saquon Barkley out wide and they're running him, and then we get to the regular season or the preseason, the regular season, and the plays disappear. So I don't know what they're going to keep and what they're not going to keep, but I have a feeling this staff is going to keep a lot of what they've repeatedly worked on, and that's one of the things they've repeatedly worked on.
That's great stuff, and there is a lot of versatility here. And I think if you look at this as though it's through a Bills lens, the Buffalo was really high percentage of 3 and especially 4 receiver sets. Well, if Shepard's healthy, all of a sudden they have 4 suitable options. The Bills didn't invest heavily in tight ends, but they dug up a diamond in the rough in Dawson Knox. And I think Daniel Bellinger, who you mentioned, is a rookie this year. And the pickup of Jordan Akins is a sneaky little move by the Giants. I'm not saying draft them in fantasy, but those 2 tight ends have some ability.
Yeah, Jordan Akins used to be a receiver, if I'm not mistaken, when he was in college. So converted tight end, good size. Bellinger, and I'll tell you this, after watching Evan Ingram, who I liked, he was a sweet, sweet person. But after watching all the drops and just, oh my gosh, the mistakes,
it's frustrating.
The poor route running, this has been watching Bellinger in practice has been like manna from heaven. It's like, wow, you didn't think a tight end could be this good, for a Giant at any rate. So it's definitely been, a changeover. The Giants remade that entire tight end room. Kyle Rudolph's gone. Evan Ingram left via free agency. They had Caden Smith couldn't pass the physical, so they moved on from him. Jordan Akins came in, Ricky Seals-Jones, who I think is going to do a lot of the blocking for them, and Bellinger, who, I think is going to be sneaky good and definitely a guy to keep an eye on.
Got to talk defense here before we let you go, Patricia. And you talked about Don Martindale's system and the scheme, and he's going to try to put pressure on opposing teams. And then you look at what the Giants have suddenly up front after a couple of drafts. I loved Azeez Ojulari. I thought he was a steal in the second round last year. You come back with a top selection like Kayvon Thibodeau on the outside, and of course a lot of beef inside, Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams. So is this the strength of the team? Is this where the New York Giants win football games this year, as the offense sort of finds its identity as their defensive front seven?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, right now there's still some question marks in the defensive secondary. They moved on from James Bradbury, as you know, they had to because of the salary cap. They moved on from Logan Ryan. So I think they're going to be okay in the secondary, but just in looking at the moves and what they've been trying to do, the front seven, I think, is going to be key, because ideally, if you can get home with the front seven, now maybe the back end of the defense doesn't have to hold coverage as long. And it's going to be a situation where if everybody's healthy, pick your poison. Who are you going to double up? You're going to double up Leonard Williams? Okay, great. Ojulari and Thibodeau are going to come in and they're going to come at you. Plus, whoever Martindale decides to send in on a blitz, because I do anticipate they're going to be doing a lot of blitzes, a lot of stunts, and that sort of thing. So, that front seven, I think, significantly upgraded. Whereas in the past, you really just had maybe one guy, if you were that lucky, and that guy could easily be doubled, or you can game plan against him. So, you look at the history of the Giants, the recent history of the Giants, 2007, 2011. I always make this comparison. Those teams had at least 3 solid pass rushers, guys that you could legitimately make a case to double up. The Giants now have that. And then you throw in some of these other guys that they have, like the Ellerson Smiths, and like I said, some of these blitzers that they're going to have from the back end. Now they got a pass rush. And if everybody's healthy, look out.
Yeah, I don't have much to expand on that, except for I was going to ask you about this front 4, not the front 7. I really think Dexter Lawrence is a Vita Vea-like player. Leonard Williams has been a staple now for quite a while. And yeah, maybe his contracts were a little big, but he's really hard to play against. And the combination of Thibodeau and Ojulari is a really dynamic edge, lighter, 240-pound dynamic guys that should be fixtures here for a long time. So, you mentioned Martindale taking over. I don't know if they have the corners to be super blitz heavy, but that's going to come. But they may already have the front intact that they don't have to blitz much.
Exactly. I mean, look, ideally, I think every defensive coordinator would love to get home with a 4-man rush and not have to send 5, 6, 7 guys, because then that takes away from coverage. And quarterbacks, as you know, can get the ball out of their hand quickly. They can dump it off, and it neutralizes a rush. So that being said, I think, we're going to see aggressiveness from Martindale's system. You will see, I think, an uptick in blitzing, but at the same time, they know they have to be smart. They can't just throw the kitchen sink at the quarterback on every single, pass rushing opportunity. So I think they're going to, they're still trying to get a feel for it. They're doing some creative stuff on defense too. I know I mentioned before some of the creativity they're doing on offense. They've got some new looks on defense that I've never seen. And I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh, this is going to be so beautiful if it comes together the way they think it's going to be. And it's all designed to get after the quarterback and beat the offensive lineman with speed and power.
So if it all does come together, last one for you, Patricia, can the Giants make waves? Can they compete? Can they go win the East this year? Or is this team more about 2023 and beyond?
I think, if I had to take a guess, I'm going to say they're going to be better than last year. I will say that. I would be stunned if they finish with 4 or fewer wins this year. I mean, unless a great injury bug, which this team has been known to deal with or have to deal with, wipes everybody out, I think this team will be a better than the 4-win team. The NFC East has historically, at least the last decade or so, or last few years, I should say, has been weak. So it's like you never quite know what you're going to get. So I guess you could say that, yeah, they have as good as a chance as anyone. That being said, they were hamstrung with the salary cap. I don't think they have everything they need or everything they wanted to get. They had to prioritize certain things. I mentioned the defensive secondary is still a little bit of a question mark. Maybe that works out. Maybe it doesn't. So I'm going to say they're going to be probably borderline. Could they win the NFC East? I'm not so sure. I think this year is all about getting everybody in place, getting the systems together, getting everybody up to speed on the systems. And I think in 2023, that's the year. If you were to ask me the same question next year, I'm going to say absolutely. That's got to be the year that they've got to make a move and start getting back into the postseason. But this year, I think it's kind of 50-50 at this point.
So 2023, that's when you get the bone-in wings and the real spicy sauce.
There you go.
And then Brian Daboll will have that system going. We'll see if Daniel Jones is still the quarterback then. Yeah, it's a big foundational year for the New York Giants. Patricia, we love chatting with you. Appreciate you giving us some time today to break down this football team. And everybody, you can find Patricia on Twitter at Patricia_Traina. She writes for GiantsCountry.com, SI covering those New York Giants, and of course, every day right here on the Locked On Podcast Network with Locked On Giants. Patricia, thank you so much.
Thanks so much, guys.
All right, next we will maybe Matt and I will kind of go through the NFC West here to finish it up in the final, or the
I'm going to recap some Giants stuff too. There's a lot more I want to talk about with this team. I think they're a really fascinating team.
Absolutely. Okay, so we'll get into the rest of that. Maybe make some too early predictions about the NFC East as well. But of course, we got to let the folks out there know about BetOnline. You can bet on those New York Giants sleeper team to win the East. I bet you can still get some pretty good odds right now, and you can bet on tons of NFL futures at BetOnline, your number one source for all your betting stats and sports information. Find all the latest sports developments, news, and odds, including NBA finals going on right now, NHL hockey conference finals, Major League Baseball all summer long, the latest fighting news, MMA, UFC, boxing, and of course, your continued source for not just sports wagering information, live betting, esports, and more, and Vegas casino games as well. Play a little poker, blackjack in between your sports bets. So get over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action at BetOnline, where the game starts. Okay, Matt, those New York Giants, I'm excited to see a new direction because I think Patricia hit on something that I hadn't really thought about. But, you get back to the Coughlin era, and it's felt like an organization that's kind of been behind as we've seen the league change so much over the course of the last decade and even over the last 3, 4, 5 years. And the Giants have been in sort of, another era. And I think this ushers in just some new ideas, more play action, more positionless football on offense, talking about moving pieces around and just making things more difficult for your opponents.
Yeah, 100%. And here's the big thing I want to say about the Giants, and it's a big picture rant I'm going to go on here is, again, I love the hiring of Daboll, the Bills' influence in the front office and the coaching staff. Perfect. I think that's a great start. And I'm sure Giants fans recognize this, but they had nice draft capital this offseason with 2 early first-round picks and an early second. But they had really no cap space, so I just did a little search before we went on the air. They have $53 million in cap space as it stands from a year from now. That's 5th most in the league. So this year is going to be some growing pains. They're going to try to find out what sticks, what goes wrong, what they're keeping, what they're moving on from, who's worth the money, who isn't. And I don't expect them to be a division winning type team. That doesn't mean it isn't going to be a successful year, though. So if by chance this thing gets off the rails and they're 1-7 and it's ugly and, oh, man, I think they could be a massive trade deadline type of team. Barkley, Galladay, just totally clean out the old. But if things are going well, I could see them reinvesting in some of those guys, franchise Barkley, extend Jones, and I think it could go either way. And neither way is going to cripple the team at this point either. They can recover if things don't go well on the field here, and the people they're playing with aren't the ones they want to live with next year and going forward.
I've been one to crush David Gettleman, the old GM for the New York Giants. But one thing Gettleman did is he did gift the new staff by trading down, which he never did,
right
on the way out the door, giving them an extra first-round pick. So now they add another offensive tackle. They had a stud edge rusher. Now you start to look at this team and say, okay, well, maybe Daniel Jones doesn't figure it out. Maybe he becomes the guy because there's better stuff around him, but there are some weapons for him on offense. There's an offensive line now being built that could be really good. There's that front seven we talked about that's really good. That's how you build a football team. And so foundationally, they are in a pretty good place now. And it started even before this regime, but they added to it, obviously, with a couple of really high draft picks this year. And then you look next year and you have some money. Maybe you sign a cornerback, and that's that last thing you need on defense. And maybe you even need to draft a quarterback, or maybe you make a trade to go get that quarterback or something. So you could really see how, if the offensive line and the front seven are as good as probably most Giants fans are hoping, this team could be really good. And they just kind of can start throwing some more things in future seasons to add to that mix. But that being said, I think a lot of the teams in the East got a little bit better, right, Matt? So
of course, right.
Did the Giants do enough to even gain any ground? And there's a big difference between, being better than a 4-win team and being a division champion.
100%. And, as it sits here on June 6th, my 49th birthday, by the way, how about that? Old
Happy
timer.
birthday.
Yeah, how about that? I'm not going to predict this team to win a lot of games. I mean, I'm always a little prejudiced against first-time head coaches, although I love this hire. There's a lot of moving parts here, but I am predicting that a foundation will be poured this season for a nice house to be built. And I think, you mentioned it. We didn't talk enough about the O-line, but you have a great young pair of tackles. You have 2 edge pass rushers and an interior D-line. That in itself, it looks like a foundation that Daboll can work with. Some of the hard things are in place. I mean, quarterback aside, I understand that stuff. But if you move on from Barkley, you could find another guy at running back. You know what I mean? Kadarius Toney and Wan'Dale Robinson are going to have roles here, assuming Toney sticks around, which I assume he will. I like the young tight end. So I think honestly, we started this podcast by saying for the first time in half a decade, I'm actually optimistic about the franchise as a whole.
Right. And he's kind of excited to see what it looks like, what the product looks like in the field. It's been pretty ho-hum there.
Yeah.
The New York Giants, especially offensively for a while and really defensively too. You still like the Cowboys? The Eagles got better.
I'm leaning towards the Eagles.
Cowboys are kind of, it's as Dak goes is how good they're going to be, but they still have a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. And I think Washington got better, even if you don't love the leadership aspect of Carson Wentz. I think they got better talent-wise at quarterback, and he's proven,
yeah, I do too.
He can put up a really good half a season in the blink of an eye, and all of a sudden the Commanders are up there. And by the way, we're going to be talking with David Harrison sometime very soon here on the podcast, the host of Locked On Commanders. He also does the Buccaneers, so we'll probably double up and do a little Bucks Commanders on a podcast. But when you look at the division, the one thing I don't see the Giants doing is winning the division.
No,
but I could see. I think I could see all the other 3 teams winning the division, because I think they're all better at quarterback.
Yeah, I confidently will probably pick the Giants 4th in the division, which again doesn't mean it's going to be a terrible year. I mean, it's all about a year from now to start making that progress. The one thing just to throw out about the division is I don't think the Cowboys are better on paper. I mean, most teams in the league right now are better on paper because everyone's healthy, and we talk about that all the time. But I do think they're better at quarterback, even though it's the same guy, because I think Dak needs to carry the team. And of all the quarterbacks in this division, he's certainly the most capable. I think the Eagles are probably going to be my pick just because they're really strong on both lines of scrimmage. They now have a lot of weapons, hard to play against. But I'm with you with Washington too. Like, if that D-line's dominant and Wentz plays pretty well with a bunch of pass catchers that I like, they could win 9 or 10 games and be sneaky playoff type of team.
Yeah, sort of post-hype, because they were supposed to do that last year, and I think they got better this year. So we'll see if it ends up happening, right?
Agreed.
And Patricia mentioned this has been traditionally a winnable division recently, but they got a lot better. So now that the Giants have started to turn a corner, maybe the division's also more difficult than it had been in the last couple of years. So even if they get better, it still might be more difficult than it was a couple of years ago to win the East. But it'll be a fun division nonetheless. I can't wait. I think I'm going Eagles, Dallas, Washington, New York. I think that's how I've got it right now.
Yeah. But if I were Giants fans, I would be looking at it like, what are my chances of winning this division, as Patricia said, 1 year from now? Dallas is always tight against the cap. Maybe the Eagles don't have their quarterback. Wentz is just a guy. And all of a sudden, my team's trended in the right direction. That's exciting.
Absolutely, yeah. And being there for a long time with that foundation.
Right.
Find your quarterback and you're in great shape, as we've seen with the Buffalo Bills. So, all right, fun stuff there. That is the New York Giants. Thanks again to Patricia Traina for joining us here on the show. Thanks, everybody, for making Peacock and Williamson your first listen every day. You can find us on Twitter at BD Peacock. And make sure you wish Matt a happy birthday at Williamson NFL on Twitter or on the YouTube comments. And Matt and I will be back tomorrow right here, Peacock and Williamson.